Well, looks like we're live. Hello. I am going to tell you some stories about the horrors of grammar school in very rural New Hampshire, and I urge you to compare my stories to your stories, and especially to your kids' stories. I hear about, you know, the trials and tribulations of kids today, and they are certainly they're there, but they're certainly different. It's not like it was a breeze back then. So I'm going to go through it. A lot of you don't know me. A lot of you people know me from BCN. A lot of you people know me from WBZ, but I don't think I told these stories on either of those stations. So here you go. You ready? This is grammar school in very rural New Hampshire. For one thing, it's important to note that I was born in December, so I was always younger and smaller than most kids, so I got beat up a lot. We'll get to that part later. When I was when do you start in first grade? When you're 6? So I was probably 5, right? I was really small and really young. And the school was right across the street. Right across the street. You could hit it with a golf ball. And I was a member of the first grade and the first class that was there. The pavement wasn't even dry yet. They had put down cardboard because the pavement was still kind of wet and it smelled like pavement. And the school was like this. It was before we get to that, the year before I went to school, everyone went to school in a one-room schoolhouse. 1 room, 8 grades. 8 grades, 1 room, 1 teacher. And on my when you go to get used to school for one day, what do you call it? Orientation day. I was in that school because orientation day is, the previous year. So you get to see what school is like. And it's weird because first graders are sitting beside 8th graders. And on the playground, first graders are getting beat up by 8th graders. So back to grade 1. The school had 4 rooms, 2 grades each. The teachers were Mrs. Hayes, I don't know. I can't remember the 3rd and the 4th. Mrs. Young, I think. And then Mrs. Williams and Mrs. Scribner. And Mrs. Scribner was also the principal. And she plays a lot into my first 8 years of school. She was also my father's teacher, so go figure. By the way, my nose, check this out. I did one of those where you wet it and you stick it on your nose and take it off and it's supposed to clean your pores. Yeah, it didn't clean my pores. It took them off. It left the bone there. Not really. It's not a bone. It's cartilage. When you die and you rot, this nose part goes away and only the top part stays. You know that. So school, first grade, Mrs. Hayes. And it was weird living right across the street from the school because, you could see my house right out the school windows. And every day I'd go home for lunch. But not every day, but I could. I could just go home and have soup or something. But my mother was a teacher also at that school sometimes and at another school. So that didn't work out. Now, one of the big events in 2nd grade was getting hit by a car. I had instructions to go to my grandfather's house, which is right across the field. No roads needed to be crossed. But I didn't. I went home for some reason. I was going to pick up something, I guess. Crossing the road, I waved to my friend who was on the back window of the bus, which was going down the hill, Jeffrey Thorne. I waved, and then I think the car tooted because I backed up. And they hit me in the head. The car hit me in the head, conk. Obviously, it wasn't going very fast, but I did get unconscious. And they took me to the doctor. They put me in a car and took me to the doctor. There was no ambulance in my town. No ambulance. And then on the way, my mother, she crossed us and said, "Hey, Brad's in the car here. He got hit by a car." So we went to the doctors, and he pronounced me okay. But Mrs. Hayes did give me two plastic dinosaurs, a little orange one and a little green one, a Brontosaurus and, of course, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. This is before Velociraptor had gained any attention. And out on the playground, recess was pretty tough because there were the bullies, and then there were the regular eighth grade kids. And one thing that we had to do was, we didn't have a choice. You couldn't not do it, I don't think. There was a new gym, and there were 2 back doors in the gym, and each back door had a little cement riser, like a little step, little porch. And the younger kids had to stand on one of those doorways, run across the wall of the gym to the other one. And during that time, the older kids would peg basketballs and those very specific playground balls at you. But the basketballs were the brutal ones. 8th grade kids could whip it hard. You know, they're almost in high school. And so if it hit your head, if it hit your legs, it would knock you down. You know, you'd get knocked down while running on the pavement. Worse, if it hit your head, it would hit with such force that it would knock your head against the wall sometimes. And that was recess. And nobody, that would not happen now. It would be, and maybe it shouldn't have happened then, but it did. And I'm better off for it, I think. What else happened in second grade? First and second grade. Well, I learned to write. I was like the last person to learn everything. I was the last person to learn to write. I think I put an eraser in my ear, a pencil eraser, and forgot about it, and it was there for a long time. What else? I hated math. I cried in math because I just hated it. I was also the last person to learn how to tie my shoes in kindergarten. It was very stressful to me. I cried on that one, too. Boston Bobs. Kids could be jerks in grammar school. Yes, Boston Bob, that's right. Especially at our grammar school where all kids, all ages, went to school together and did recess together. I was too young at that point for probably keep away, which was, there were 2 teams. They were the kind of well-to-do kids and the poor kids. And you would run around with the ball and someone would tackle you. Then you'd hand it to somebody else and they'd run around with the ball and tackle you. And then you'd try to get the ball away from them. And whoever had the ball when the bell rang won the game. One time, poor Richard Levitt, he had been tackled and he got up to run, but there was a backstop for the baseball diamond. It had these pipes that supported it. Poor guy, he got up to run and ran right into the pipe, like big, thick metal support pipe. And it went dong, and it rung his bell. He was staggering around. Let's get to 3rd and 4th grade. Mrs. Williams, she also was the art teacher. She actually made us make these workbooks, sew them together. She took paper, big sheets of paper, and then sewed them together and made a cover, like kind of tie-dye paper, and we had these covers. And each week she'd give us a picture of a famous painting, and we have to write a thing about it, which is pretty cool. Like the Gleaners. I forget who did that, but that was pretty cool for 3rd and 4th grade in the middle of nowhere. Boston Bob, did you get my invitation to join me? I sent one out. So tell me your story in person. Another thing that was later on in grammar school was Who's Afraid of Me? We did Boy Scouts. Mr. Edmonds was our Boy Scout teacher. He was also a reporter for the Foster's Daily Democrat, some paper, maybe the Rochester Courier. And that was really something. We played Who's Afraid of Me in the Grange Hall. Do you know what a Grange Hall is? It's like a meeting hall. It's shaped like a church on the outside, like a box with like a clock tower. It's got a hardwood floor and a stage, and seats along the side. So depending on what's going on, if it's Halloween, there's Halloween parties there. It's a community center, really. There was one in my town and one over in Bow Lake. And we played Who's Afraid of Me on this hardwood floor. And it was brutal. What you would do was, and this is on hardwood floor, and there was some, actually, I think this was back up to 7th and 8th grade, so the kids were bigger. And one person would get out in the middle of the floor and say, "Who's afraid of me?" And all the other kids would have to run by, and you had to tackle one on the floor, like football, only a hardwood floor. And you'd be swinging around, crashing into folding chairs, wooden chairs, bloody, bruised. There's only one kid whose parent wouldn't let him play. Robert Stiles, James Stiles, wouldn't let him play, which is pretty sensible, really, because you'd break, you'd get hurt. Bang your head on the floor and hurt your finger on a wooden chair or something. But towards the end, there'd be a bunch of people in the middle, and only a few had kept going back and forth and not been tackled. So at the end, there might be 3 people running into a gang of 12 people or 15 people, just like you're blasting through the lines of a football game, trying to get through. And you just, it was really something. Also, I remember something that hadn't happened in 3rd grade. And then I'll get to Boston Bob. Bob, are you at your computer? I sent you I sent a bunch of people invitations to join if they like. I hope they went out. Here's a sad thing that happened. In our school, corporal punishment was A-OK. If you went out in the hall, if the teacher put you out in the hall for being a wise guy or something, you'd go stand in the hall. And the principal, if she saw you in the hall, would say, "What'd you do?" And depending on what you did, many times those students, my brother included, she would go into the office, grab you by the hair, and slap you back and forth across the face, like slap, 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 slap. A lot. And the person would come back to class all crying and red-faced because they'd been slapped, like multiple times. Not just once, but back and forth, like a beating. And one time, and you didn't have to do that much. There were fire drills, which I was scared to death of because the gong was so loud. I dreaded them. Dreaded them like a dentist. And one day there was one. And we had to file out no talking during the fire drill, as you know. Well, at our school, if you broke the no talking rule, you had to go to the office. You're probably going to get slapped. And my brother, my little brother, he must have been in 2nd grade because I was like in 4th grade. He went in there, he got slapped back and forth, and I knew it. And he came out, he was all crying, and I cried too. So corporal punishment was a thing. Let's talk to Bob here. Bob says, here's my grammar school horror story. Horror. Here it is. You may remember they had those aptitude tests back then. Yeah. The Cooter test, I think. That's what I think they were called, right? That's what they called them in Caddyshack. After my teacher saw my aptitude test, he said I had no future. Well, what did the aptitude say? It had to say something. Little did I realize I am dyslexic and have ADD. They had no idea what to do with peeps like me. Yeah. Fortunately, as you know, Brad, I've done quite well in my life. I'd love to see that grammar teacher today. Yeah. That grammar teacher's probably dead, right? So there's that. Can't be on his computer. He must be at work. Sorry, he says. Okay. Let's move on. There are a couple of bullies. I'm not going to name names on that one. but more games. There was a big pile of snow, and the game was you had to go up the hill and try to knock these big bullies off. And then there'd be fights and stuff. But there was seldom actual one-on-one fights. It was just kind of big-time roughhousing. A lot of roughhousing. Your ears would hurt all the time. Oh, when we did those, I forget what we call them, war or something. And for a long time, the entire half an hour of recess was piggyback rides, and you'd ram into each other and try to tear each other off each other. You know, a big guy and a smaller person on top slamming into each other. Kind of like jousting, I guess, without the sticks. Also, one time, I was pretty good at baseball. I was catching one time, and somebody threw a pitch, bounced off the plate, and hit me right in the, you know what. It was really bad. It went boom, bam. I don't know, man. It was a kind of a life-changing event. A life-preventing event, maybe. And, oh, gee whiz, so many, so many mean... Oh, okay. Now, another thing was my mother was my teacher for a while. After a while, some of the teachers would rotate from room to room to teach social studies. Like one social studies teacher, who was my mother, would go around and teach third grade social studies to the third grade, and then eighth grade social studies to the eighth grade, whatever social studies are. What are social studies? Don't know. She said, I'm glad that's not on a test. But it was really a bummer having my mother be the teacher, because I felt like I had to act out and be cool, and it put her in a difficult place, and I feel bad about that now. If something else pops up that's bad, I will tell you, but this is interesting. Oh, okay. I'll wrap it up with this. The eighth grade teacher. Now, it used to be that the principal was the eighth and seventh grade teacher. But the year I got in eighth grade, they got a new one. Fresh out of college. First year, she went to UNH. She was, hot. Am I allowed to say hot? She was smoking. Even if you were an adult, she was smoking. But when you're in the eighth grade, she was something quite different than the former teacher, who was probably 60. She had thick red hair. She braided it and brought it around front. She was a hippie. She was very sweet. She didn't believe in any kind of no discipline. So she was the opposite of the person who would hit you. She wouldn't do anything. And it was kind of a free-form situation, which was anathema to that small town. All the rest of the teachers were authoritarians, so this way she was didn't set very well. Everybody knew what was going on in there. And by the time I got to eighth grade, it had gotten so crowded they had to take the gym and divide it in half. The gym was also the lunchroom. They had to divide it in half, build a partition. So our classroom was half that gym, and the lunchroom was the other half of the gym. And this is what happens when there's no discipline at all. I don't know how soon it started, but you could sit anywhere you want. You could put your desk in any position you want. There weren't enough desks, so there were cafeteria tables. There might be 3 people at a cafeteria table with your books on the cafeteria table. I remember the teacher, she used to sit up on her desk and not cross her legs. You do the math. That's and this is when we're starting to like girls. We're still pretending you don't like them, but you do, and you don't know if you do or not, or you don't know what's going on. But you knew what was going on with that teacher, man. So, since there was no discipline, it started out with. What did it start out with? Oh, spitballs. Back then they had the clear barrel Bic pens, and people would shoot spitballs at each other, but not a little, like all day, 100 spitballs. And you get stuck to your face. And then it graduated to BBs. You put a little dent in your ruler and put a BB in it and go, and the BBs would fly out. Then actual pea shooters, where people were bringing bags of peas, split peas to school, and going, and like machine gunning. And people had to take encyclopediae, and stack them in front of their face so they wouldn't get hit with projectiles. And then, so you could have your. I had my desk in the corner because for a while you could have your desk anywhere you wanted. And it was during Christmas time, we had these paper chains kind of hanging over the desk, swooping down, and you could hear the BBs ripping through the paper. What was really dangerous was a really basic weapon was the rubber band with the folded up piece of paper. Those were dangerous. You could completely put out an eye. And one time, Richard Derby, during music class, some music teacher came in, and somebody got him with a rubber band hairpin, a big long hairpin. It stuck right in his head. It went doink and stuck in. So this is what it was like. All day long, probably, thousands of projectiles, BBs, pea shooters, spitballs, and wads of paper. And Mr. and Mrs. Lindbergh used to come and clean the school at night. We were right across the street, and we'd see the pile of stuff. There's a pile, like probably 3 feet across and maybe 18 inches high of stuff kids shot at each other. About discipline, one time I did some offense, and the principal, who was still there being principal, even though she wasn't a teacher, she decided that she was going to make an example of me. I think I was throwing my baseball glove. This was a gym, and it had these big gym windows up. And for some reason, I was throwing my baseball glove up in the air and trying to catch it on the ledge or something. But I got caught, and so she made me go out on the front lawn of the school, right in front of the main road, where the cars go by, like the whole town goes by, and throw my baseball glove up in the air endlessly. Just throw it up and catch it. Throw it up and catch it. It would have been better if she had me do something to help the homeless or something, but there were no homeless in my town. There were no homeless. There were only Protestants. There was only one kind of church. It was a Protestant church. It was a box with wooden pews. There were no Catholic churches. There were no synagogues. There were no African Americans even. There might have been a Hispanic person, but all we knew were white Protestants. That's it. There was a guy named Bisson. He must have been French. But there were these names like Bickford, Thorne, Tasker, names like that. All his English names. Is that it? Oh, yeah, that's pretty much it, except one of the good things was, I'll finish up with this. The teacher took a shine to me. I was, in 8th grade, and I was a young 8th grader. And she said, hey, I need to help painting my apartment. You want to come and help me paint my apartment? It's like, yeah, you bet I do. So I rode in her Jeep. She lived in Newmarket, New Hampshire. And I've been to that building since when I went to college. She lived in Newmarket, New Hampshire, drove a cool Jeep. She went out with a guy who looked like John Fogerty on Cosmo's Factory. And I helped her paint her apartment. and there was no funny business. But I did get paid, and you know what I got paid? A Carl Yastrzemski. I got to go to the Newington Mall and pick out a baseball glove. That's pretty good. A Carl Yastrzemski Triple Crown baseball glove. So that was a win-win. I was the teacher's pet. I don't know why. The really bad news is, she didn't believe in teaching English grammar. So I've been a grammar idiot all my life. Always struggled. I mean, I kind of get it, but not officially. I don't know the rules, subject, predicate, object, subject, all that. It's a struggle for me. But that was the sum of the grade school. I mean, I can do high school next time. Oh, high school. The fights, the jobs, the fights, the parties. I went to Spalding High School. There are some people that watch this that are still going to Spalding High School. No, there are some that watch this that still live in Rochester. But I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to not hibernate so much. I've been very active doing things like around the house, caulking the tub and building shelves or assembling shelves. And I'm trying to get in shape and all. I did lose 7 pounds. Plus, I got to get my nose to heal up from that thing. What do you call them? You wet it, you put it on, you let it dry and take it off. Rip. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. And let's see. A reminder. Oh, first, thank you so much to everybody who went up to Kowloon for the Beatles party with Chachi. Great band. Sal Baglio of the Stompers, and I was the MC. And everybody was dancing. It was so much fun. Hopefully they'll do another one this summer. But coming up, I think it's March 3rd. Is that a Saturday? I mean a Sunday, March 3rd. If it is, no, jeez. I can't be sure of the date, but like right around there, the next Come Together at City Winery is happening. And I'm going to be the MC of that. Chachi will be there. John Duke Logan, Stephanie LaPrette. A lot of fun. And here's another thing. You know the guy that is the science guest I have on sometimes? Doug Arion. Well, he's going down to Texas for the big eclipse. He invited me to go because he has a trip that he's put together. I couldn't go. But I think we're going to rig it up so he's going to, and this is right where at the peak of the eclipse, he's going to have a camera on. I think he's going to be able to, we're going to be able to broadcast that eclipse live here. So you might want to get ready for that. That'd be cool. The eclipses are interesting. The stuff that happens related to the eclipse is always more interesting to me, like animals go to sleep. Weird stuff happens. Boston Bob, you take care. And everybody else, what time is it? Oh, it's time for me to go and get some exercise. So talk to you soon. Bye. End stream. Okay.